All the hatred in the world, it really hurts my soul. Another body in the street, another life gone cold. Another mother in agony watching life unfold, but there is no console. Tell me.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Ironically enough, the same time James is fighting for his freedom from taking a picture of an empty courtroom, this clown was made free from murder.
Tell the people where we headed, Jay.
Headed this court day, man. They're trying to put me back in jail, man. Gotta show these people, man, I'm not the one to go to jail.
Okay, for a documentary, I would go on the record calling that. See you next Tuesday. There's no other word for it. I mean, she was just terrible.
She called me ignorant, man.
Right,
you know
right.
that in front of my kids, man.
Because if Carl Ratner can get a no charge today, we out here because I want y'all to know we just left court. And not this court, we just left the big boy court. Now, the person out here can't talk about this case, but I can talk about this case because I ain't under nobody's gag order.
Go ahead.
And for my brother, where I had to sit there and look at a judge, try to crucify him because he took a picture of an empty courtroom and try to make him feel less of a man and tell how disrespectful he is to take a picture of a courtroom and then to say how we are treated as second class. I literally had to walk out because I saw a prosecutor and a judge want to convict him over a picture when Carl Rittenhouse walked away after murdering people.
I know but yes.
Hey, listen, man. No justice, no peace. Do you hear me?
The day before Thanksgiving, and wouldn't you know it, James is back in the community, giving out turkeys and care packages to families, to other members of other organizations that are going to hand it out in their areas as well. That's just what he does.
We out here in the Highland community right now, in Washington, D.C., y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Southside, baby. Southside family.
We out here, man.
Putting that work in the trenches.
You know what I'm saying? We utilizing our transportation to transport turkeys, man, to these honorable men that's out here distributing them out here to the community, y'all.
Bringing it to the people that need them, y'all. That's what we do. We're in the alley right now.
Yeah, trenches.
It's a message to my little. You don't gotta rush. You got all the time in the world to be a man. First you must understand. It's a message to what it's like in this world. I know you gon' have questions about things that you don't understand. It's a message to my little. Pops ain't around. Mom's always working. You trying to be the man.
Know where the yellow lines is. Come on, Cat.
Trayvon and Carter. Trayvon White. I'm with Trey. Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you.
Yes,
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Same day, but it's nighttime now, and we headed out to feed the homeless.
Still out here passing out hot meals and everything, man.
Yeah, the best you gonna get the best, man.
Just like that. Y'all, man, Incarcerated Lives Matter, man. Y'all make sure y'all support my man. Make sure y'all check him out, man. Make sure y'all check him out, too, man. We out here. Keep pushing. We out here, frontline soldiers. We frontline.
After dropping off turkeys at the PG County shelter, we were invited to El Malik Farrakhan's annual Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, but this is where we would have 500 and 600 youngins every Friday and Saturday night. Man, not one beef. They would come from all over the city. This used to be the only spot in the city that they would come to squash their beefs, man. Man, that's powerful. Police didn't like it. We had El Salvadorians come up here, right? The police stopped them in Spring Road and told them, if you go up there again, we locking y'all straight up. You feel me? They tried to take the power.
It's Christmas time at the Hallway House, and the IMF team is all gathered around giving out gifts to one another. The lady you see here sitting in the white shirt handing out the gifts, this is none other than Nicole Barnes. Now, you might have seen her in the background in some of the parts of the documentary. Nicole plays an intricate part in the organization of IMF. She is actually the director of the organization, and her co-director is Dr. Jacina that you met earlier in the documentary.
Yeah.
Tell them where we at, Jay. What's going on?
Well, we actually at the facility where people that's just practicing for the life coach. They over here, you know, doing a little greetings for holiday season, man. So we here brought a couple of hoodies, man, for them to look at, you know, for the senior citizens, man. See what it is. Beautiful dinner. Shout out to Miss Sonia. All that good stuff. How you doing?
What you eat?
Okay.
What was they feeding y'all?
Knowledge. Oh, feeding the whole food.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of knowledge though. I almost choked off that one. A bunch of knowledge though. But the food was some jalapeno. What's it?
Jollof rice.
Jello rice. First time eating that, it was great. Fish, greens, cabbage, goat, jerk chicken. That's what the other people all eat chicken. They was eating all that. It was great, man. Beautiful moment, man. Nice catering service, man. You know, whispers. Great, man. Appreciate the opportunity.
Christmas Day was no different than any other busy day for James. We headed down to the PG County shelter to hand out gifts and other items for the men and women at the shelter. James and IMF teamed up with the Solid Foundation and many other organizations that come through for the men and women at the shelter.
Thank you for coming through and showing us some love up at the shelter. We really appreciate it. And happy holidays and happy Hanukkah and Kwanzaa to everybody. Nazi Ramba. Yes, sir.
In the world that we grew up in, there was always, as you came into your neighborhood, there were always people that were there that you could count on, that I don't want to say held things down, but as a child, if my mom was running late and we came home, we had a neighbor 2 doors down that my mom could depend on, right? If the kids were out we were all out at the playground and somebody saw something while we were out there, my mom knew that there were eyes on us. We don't have that in the same fashion today that we had it back then. But James is that person. If there is anything that he can do, contribute, give, he does. But here's the thing. He's very open and honest, unashamed, and unpolished in all of that. It's the real, right? So when you get him, you get the genuine, the raw, uncut, but you get all of him in that manner. So I would tell anyone that, and I'm not, I have no idea. I'll support him till the wheels fall off, and I have no idea what I'm supporting him on at this point. I know nothing about what this is about. I just know that he's a good man. And not only he's been a good man, he has always honored and respected me. And one thing that I can say about him, that there is not a lot of men who can say that. In my husband's passing, he has always respected that relationship with my husband by being there for me and my children. And that is not only honorable and commendable, that is a respect and dignity that a lot of people don't have and have never seen. That a man that will keep his word in life and death.
You say that's an honorable thing.
Not only is it is the most honorable thing that you stood with somebody and the commitment that you made to them when you stood with them, when they can no longer stand, you still honor it. You still hold to it. Without anyone asking, with no question, it's just the routine. You just keep going with it. And that has to be part of the definition of honorable.
You said you want to get on camera, that's what you said? Christmas Eve night, and James is all the way out in East Baltimore, Maryland, handing out gifts to the daughters of an incarcerated father.
Cool, right. James, I want to thank you because you always come through for me and the girls. And when even when you asked me for that list, what made it more special when you asked for that report card, because oh my gosh, he always be on them about school. So when they asked, they was like, why you want that report card? And he said, and they look like, he knows JR, don't he? So that really was impressive to them. So you know what I'm saying? I just want to say thank y'all.
I appreciate it, man. Like I say, I love this family. My good man, rest of the soul. So we was in the same jail together. We got released together. We got released. He introduced me to this tiki kid right here at this house. You know what I'm saying? And he told me how much of a good woman you was and how much you meant to me and your kids. So I gotta make sure I gotta do my part and be happy. Real. I know he looking down at us like, what's up? We drove all the way from DC up here. You know
yes.
It's Christmas Eve, so.
And I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a great thing, man, that that we come out here, on behalf of you, what you're doing for your kids, man. That's what's up. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, man, you got some beautiful young ladies here that's doing good in school, and they deserve everything that you're giving them. You know what I'm saying? So we appreciate you, man, being an honorable man. Yeah, man, being an honorable man, you are, man. You know what I'm saying? We able to, help you out with your blessings. We deliver what you already do.
I go to DC jail at the time. Prior to COVID, I was going to DC jail about every other week. I speak to different groups inside the jail about mental health, substance abuse, and how it does affect their lives. Prior to their first experience in their criminalistic lifestyles. And he had heard about a woman coming into the prison and speaking to the groups. And then after he was released on the CARES Act, due to, the rampant spread of COVID throughout DC jail, I sought him out on through social media. I messaged him because it was right around the time of George Floyd, and everyone was doing the Black Lives Matter, and I saw him and the Incarcerated Lives Matter movement. And it just happened to be him. And I had been researching James Hutchings, and then David and I had been discussing how or if we were going to meet him and if we wanted to see if he was willing to work with us on his case. So that's how we went there.
Well, I want to leave it extend on to say the system itself is very much set to be fair to some and unfair to others. By that, when growing up in an urban, poor city environment, especially if you are a person of color, you are targeted. It's a known fact. Not by all, but you're targeted a lot by many.
Hello, my name is Pete Gerlach. I have been a professional family systems therapist for 33 years. I'm 74 years old. Let me just suggest a trauma, by definition. A trauma is any kind of event, notice this, or process, a series of events. A trauma is any kind of event or process that causes significant disruption in normal mental, psychological, physical behavior and development and growth.
Mr. Hutchings, David and I are going into the jail that he's in, and so there in the federal system, this is another one of our services that we provide, and it's something that I learned is very, very imperative to someone's sentencing. It's called a pre-sentence investigation. And in that pre-sentence investigation, it's very important to get your mental health history and the history of how your mental health or substance abuse has progressed throughout your life and how it plays into the key targets of when your criminalistic lifestyle began and how each crime that was committed fits with your progression of substance use or your progression of your mental health. And so in doing that, we found some very interesting alignments, which, of course we can't disclose, but it was almost concurrent with the crimes that were committed, the escalation of the progression of the mental health. So, on racial profiling, I am a white woman, clearly from the South. James is a big, tall, black man, clearly from DC. Every time I go to the jail to visit him, we are definitely racially targeted. The first visit, it was a little bit difficult. Second visit, David was there. It wasn't as difficult, but it did take some time to get through security. Where the first visit I got through security, but then getting through the second portion to get on the elevator to get into the visitation room was a lot more difficult. My visit yesterday, I was by myself in the approved professional room because of course they cannot voice record you when you're with your therapist or your mental health providers or your lawyer. And we were interrupted 3 different times by the guards for really no reason. One time they made me move to a different chair. Another time they made us put our masks back on an hour and a half into our session. And at another point, they brought in his therapist from the jail, but his therapist is sitting right here with me. He doesn't have a therapist in the jail. We were profiled.
What many don't know is before James was released from DC jail due to the COVID-19 virus, he was brutally beaten by 6 COs of the DC jail. They said it was a mistaken identity. A coincidence? I think not. Many of you might recognize this face because you've probably seen him on your TV screen, probably most recently. This is FBI Director Christopher Wray. He is in hot water as we speak right now with the House Intelligence Committee.
Comer subpoenaed the document that he's requested. We have jurisdiction over the FBI, which they seem to act like we do not. I personally called Director Wray and told him he needs to send that document. Today is the deadline. So let me not just tell you, let me tell Director Christopher Wray right here, right now. If he misses the deadline today, I am prepared to move contempt charges in Congress against him. We have jurisdiction over this. He can send us that document. We have the right to look at that, Republicans and Democrats alike in that committee. And if he does not follow through with the law, we will move contempt charges against Christopher Wray and the FBI.
You know what he says,
they are
Mr.
not
Speaker?
above the law.
But that's neither here nor there when it comes to James Hutchings. But Christopher Wray is the FBI director that personally came after James. But this talk of corruption is not new for Christopher Wray. Within his own FBI ranks, he has been accused of racism. So if the black FBI detectives feel like they're not getting a fair shake within the FBI building, how is the FBI treating the black community? We'll get back to the rabbit hole in a second. But first, we got to cover another hole. January 5th, 2022, the residents of the Holway house woke up to the house collapsing into a hole due to the building that was being built next door, which has gentrification written all over it.
More now, that D.C. home that shifted badly on its foundation and nearly collapsed with people inside. Turns out they now don't have a place to stay.
7 News is asking D.C. officials, where was the oversight? D.C. Bureau Chief Sam Ford is live in Southeast with what's happening there. Sam?
Yes, Allison, Dave. Well, 1614 Good Hope Road has been for the past 7 months the home for a program called from ex-offenders that is called Incarcerated Lives Matter. But as of Wednesday, the residents here believe something on the other side of this construction fence caused this house to start falling apart.
This is the world's first Holway house. Not a halfway, but a wholeway house, James Hutchings jokes. An ex-inmate himself who lived here with 3 others until Wednesday morning.
This one out here in the crackling and the kitchen window is separated. We need to get out the house because the house is collapsing.
Jumped out the window. The house is right on the edge of a big hole for a 35-unit apartment complex under construction. The builders, who paid D.C. $53,000 for a building permit, wouldn't talk to us. A DCRA notice shut it down for, quote, creating unsafe conditions and failure to protect adjoining property.
Ain't got nowhere to go. Right now, we currently don't have a place to stay.
Both they and the owner of the house, who's gotten a lawyer, say the builders are not talking to them. Permits list a Marlboro construction at 1225 Park Road, and when we went there, no office. The resident said the builder's just using the address. As for Good Hope Road, and the folks who say they paid $3,300 a month rent by working jobs, selling T-shirts, seeking donations.
We set up a GoFundMe to try to get some people to donate some clothes and some toiletries because we don't have none of our belongings. We can't go in there to get any of our stuff.
Because my room is right there at the corner. Right there, that top corner right there. If it goes, I'm going right over there in that hole.
Good evening, y'all. Greetings. We have an update we would like to give you. What's up, world? On behalf of the IMF family, we would like to give you all a couple of updates. For starters, since we launched the GoFundMe for the rebuilding project on January 5th, we have raised a total of $1,720. While we still have quite a way to go to reach our 150K goal, we are so grateful for how far we've come in such a short time. Lastly, we are safe. However, we are continuing to work on establishing permanent housing. Once again, thank you all for the tremendous outpour of support and love. Let's keep the unity going. We are IMF and United we stand in an honorable way.
January 5th, 2022, man, was a sign of trying to be some destruction to what we got going on, man. We had a disaster. The whole house collapsed. Well, collapsing while residents was inside of it. The building just started collapsing from the construction next door. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was so bad that the guys that was there, they had to get out the window to get out of that jump. The door was jammed up. And they say it's from the construction that was next door that that made the disaster happen. They opened it, they're putting some 38 units, condos right beside that joint, man. And that shit, man, they hit a foundation point or something, I don't know, but that joint hit something, man, and the whole house started collapsing. So to make a long story short, man, we've been homeless as the whole house since January 5th. And I believe the day is March the 12th. It's been a rough, I would say, 2 months now. You know, we did get some people reach out to us through our GoFundMe account. I think we raised up about $2,100 and something dollars. And that's been helping us, you know, go from Airbnb to hotels, etc. About a week. It gets expensive, you know what I'm saying? But we've been weathering through the storm. That's all I know. All I know is survival, man. I don't know about how to complain or to make no excuses about anything. I just know how to move forward and don't look back. So, you know, we've been handling it as a family, you know, staying here in these hotels and stuff is one. And I haven't even been home a damn so, you know what I'm saying? Staying with my guys, man, that showed up, man. I'm with y'all, man, through it, you know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, you know, that could be triggers to, you know, to lose hope and to go back to your old ways, to criminal activity. If you lose hope, man. So I just gotta be by those guys as being a leader and show them, man, we're gonna be all right. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna make this shit work, and we're gonna make this shit, you know, be a vicious comeback. You know what I'm saying? To a minor little setback. So, you know, man, you know, we do appreciate the organizations too, the ones out PG County, man, that actually donated like clothes and underwear and socks and boots and shoes and coats and things like that, and also toothpaste, body wash. So I definitely give a special shout out to the Solid Foundation and also the Braxton Foundation. And also, what's the other young lady's name, man? Darlene, Miss Darlene. And, you know, they definitely been supportive, man. And giving us food, too. They gave us a lot of food, man. So, you know, that actually helped out a lot as well. But as far as housing, man, we still, we in a hotel right now. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, we taking it day for day, and week by week, and keeping that smile on our face, man. To know, you know, let people know, or let ourselves know first of all, that it ain't the end. You know, it's just something. Like I said, we just gotta weather through the storm, man.
What if I told you that some of the biggest music companies are in cahoots with private prison owners, and that the rap music we listen to is not only meant to entertain, but to verbally and visually support criminal behaviors that funnel disenfranchised people into these private prisons? Ever wonder why you see the same stereotypes of black and brown people depicted in hip-hop music? What if I told you that some of the biggest music companies are in cahoots with private prison owners, and that the rap music we listen to is not only meant to entertain, but to verbally and visually support criminal behaviors that funnel disenfranchised people into these private prisons. Lastly, what if I told you I have proof? In 2012, CoreCivic, formerly known as Corrections Corporation of America, the biggest name in the private prison industry, contacted 48 states offering to buy their prisons. One requirement of eligibility for the deal was particularly strange: an assurance by the agency partner that the agency has sufficient inmate population to maintain a minimum 90% occupancy rate over the term of the contract. Wait, Traggy? What? What kind of legal and ethical measures could be taken to ensure the maintenance of a 90% prison occupancy rate? Now let's work together to connect these things, because I'm sure you're a smart person. It won't be long. Let's do the work. In 2012, a mere 232 media executives were responsible for the intake of 277 million Americans, controlling all avenues necessary to manufacture any celebrity and spark any trend. Time Warner, as the owner of Warner Brothers Records, can not only sign an artist, but since they're also owners of Entertainment Weekly, they can also put an artist on the cover by next week. You think you choose what you listen to, but do you? Both BET and MTV belong to Viacom. Okay, now I know that's not news to some, but when the use of these media conglomerates is cross-checked with ownership of the biggest names in prison privatization, it's starting to get a little fishy. The largest holder in CoreCivic, formerly Corrections Corp of America, is Vanguard Group Incorporated.
So the convict lease system was, prisoners, legitimate workforce, right? They're prisoners, so the convict lease system, in essence, it was the primer and the precursor to what we know now as the private prison corporation, the private prison industry.
Prisons is booming. Private industry. You could own one yourself. You could pick a town, build one, and own one. Private. What do you think they're doing with prisons? They making everything that's in this room. They making in the prison. They making shit you ain't even seen before in the prison. They cut up your meat. Your meat. If you eat chicken down south, Winn-Dixie, Piggly Wiggly, your chicken and your beef is getting cut up in the meat in the factory. They make toys. Upstate, they making toys. They make your little race cars for your kids. They make everything.
I've been in jail. My brothers is in jail. They make license plates. They make tables. They make engines to car. They make every thing that you see on the streets in the penitentiary, and they get crumbs for that shit. The white folks is manufacturing the is in warehouse. That's all that is. It's a clock in, clock you come out, you work, and you make us some license plates. You make us some tires, you make us some rims, you make speaker boxes. They make all that shit in the penitentiary, man. From dishes to covers.
If you mean to tell me these people can make an unbiased decision whether or not, when you go to parole board, whether to let their free labor go or not, of course they're going to say, oh yeah, hit them, give them 2 more years, yeah.
The private prison corporations go to the legislators and say, we're going to solve your overcrowding problem. We have a prison built already, and you just need to give us the bodies and give us a sum of money per head per day. Okay, so it is this immaculate conception and partnership between the private and the public sector to perpetuate the system of modern day slavery.
If jails become businesses, what do you have to do? You have to market for your business. And who are you me being a business major, you have to have your target audiences. And who are your target audiences? My people.
At a private residence on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember about 25 to 30 people were being there. Right. Most of them familiar faces. Speaking of those I knew, we joked about the theme of the meeting, as many of us did not care for rap and failed to see the purpose of being invited to a private meeting to discuss the future of hip-hop. Talk to them. Among the attendees was a small group of unfamiliar faces who stayed to themselves and made no attempt to socialize beyond their circle. Based on their behavior and formal appearances, they didn't seem to be from our industry. Quickly after this meeting began, one of the industry colleagues, who shall remain nameless like everybody else, thanked us for attending. He then gave the floor to a man who only introduced himself by first name and gave no other details about his personal background. I think he was the owner of the residence, but that was never confirmed. He briefly praised all of us for the success we had achieved in our industries and congratulated us for being selected as part of this small group of decision makers. At this point, I began to feel slightly uncomfortable and the strangeness of this gathering. The subject quickly changed as the speaker went on to tell us that the respective companies we represented had invested in a very profitable industry, which could become even more rewarding with our active involvement.
Damn.
He explained that the companies we worked for had invested millions into the building of privately owned prisons, and that our positions of influence in the music industry would actually impact the profitability of these investments. At the same time, I didn't know what a private prison was, but I wasn't the only one. Sure enough, someone asked what these prisons were and what any of this had to do with music. We were told that these prisons were built by privately owned companies who receive funding from the government based on the number of inmates.
Mm-hmm.
The more inmates, the more the government would pay these prisons.
Mm-hmm.
It was also made clear to us that since these prisons are privately owned, as they become publicly traded, we'd be able to buy shares. Most of us were taken back by this. Again, a couple of people asked what this had to do with us. At this point, my industry colleague who had first opened the meeting took the floor again and answered our questions. He told us that since our employees had become silent investors in this prison business, it was now in their interest to make sure that these prisons remain filled. Our job would be to help make this happen by making music which promote criminal behavior, rap being the music of choice.
Lobbying, it's said, is the art of convincing someone to do what you want and make them believe it's the right thing.
In which members of government take jobs as lobbyists is epitomized on K Street, just a few blocks from the White House, where experience and powerful connections equal access. It was a lifestyle Jack Abramoff knew well. He was one of the most successful and wealthy lobbyists in Washington before he was charged with tax evasion and taking advantage of Indian tribes, which landed him 3.5 years in prison.
I was inside doing it. In some cases, I was at the tip of the spear of this thing.
Now he's one of the most outspoken critics of the system, which he says undermines democracy.
People are having impact on legislation, and indeed the people who are writing a lot of the legislation are not the elected officials or the staff paid by the country, but rather people paid by special interests.
Many have described lobbyists as a liar for hire.
For some of the most powerful people in Washington, people you vote into office, power and influence are a family affair.
You take somebody like Harry Reid, for example, the majority leader in the Senate. He has 3 sons and a son-in-law, all of whom have been registered lobbyists. Same thing in Missouri with Republican Roy Blunt, whose wife and several of his children are registered lobbyists.
Lobbyists are supposed to be lobbying Congress on behalf of the citizens and their interests. But after you look at what's really going on, you realize this is not lobbying, but more like bribery. Burl Howard was a partner and general counsel of the Washington, D.C. office of Strauss Friedberg, LLC, a professional consulting and technical services firm specializing in digital forensics, electronic discovery, cybersecurity investigations, and private investigative work at the cutting edge of law, technology, and policy. If you've ever been involved in the music industry, you might be aware of what the RIAA is. What they do is they represent some of the most iconic record labels behind today's most popular artists, from Atlantic, Capitol, RCA, Warner Records, Columbia, Motown, and countless others. So basically, the RIAA is the music industry. The RIAA hired Strauss and Friedberg to lobby for them on Capitol Hill. The Honorable Judge Burl Howell was the only lobbyist assigned to the RIAA. Some of you might even remember the BitTorrent cases that were going on. Judge Burl Howell was the judge that was involved in that case until they found out her history with the RIAA. Judge Howell ruled on 3 mass file sharing lawsuits, while judges in Texas, West Virginia, and Illinois had all ruled recently that such lawsuits were defective in various ways. But Howell gave her cases the green light. Attorneys could use the federal courts to sue thousands of people at once and then issue mass subpoenas to internet providers. Once it was discovered her history with the RIAA as a lobbyist, she eventually backtracked on her decision and eventually had to step down from the case due to the obvious conflict of interest. Usually the judge is supposed to act with integrity and step down ahead of time knowing the conflict of interest. But that didn't happen. So let me get this straight. James Hutchings has people in the community to come to him because they know they can depend on him. They know they can depend on his honesty. But the honorable judge has people coming to her so she can be dishonest? Allegedly. But we already know what's understood don't need to be said. James Hutchings was sentenced to 5 years in prison on firearms trafficking conspiracy charge, announced by U.S. Attorney Matthew M. Graves. James had been found guilty by a jury in May of 2022 following a trial in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. He was sentenced by the Honorable Chief Judge, Beryl A. Howe. He will be placed on 3 years of supervised release after his prison term.
James Hutchings is the one, man. At the end of the day, man, I appreciate y'all. Y'all continue to have this same energy. Y'all continue to apply pressure and know that the felons and the men and the comrades that's behind me is behind you all as well. And we here to protect. And we here to help the community that we once was a problem of. So make sure y'all dot that on there. Go.
Tough times don't last, tough people do. Times harder than the concrete that be under my shoe. I talk to Booby, he just got out the shoe. Talk to BF, he just got out the smooth. One step program, fit no man. Don't crash out, got a program. Homie time cool with you, your own man. Get a sentence cut drug program. Doing case law, going through paperwork. Your name ain't on the nigga paperwork. Your brother got killed, then your mother just passed, and your baby mother left, but you make it work. Hard turn cold, you like fuck a bitch. Jail on lock, by the flood a bitch. PO's pissed, getting hit with shit. Cuff up, y'all ain't cuffing shit. It's time to demonstrate, we gon' demonstrate. G-code is what we stand on there. Hands off policy, no hands on him. This put my homies, yeah, stand up, man. If you ain't rap, then you honorable. Morals and principle intact, then you honorable. We hold you down cause you honorable, regardless of what they your honor do. If you ain't rap, then you honorable. Morals and principle intact, then you honorable. We hold you down cause you honorable, regardless of what they your honor do.
The revolution starts within, eating poison in the pen. Victimized, televised, man became your closest friend. Over sentence, underprivileged, reading books inside your cell. Calling home, left alone, solitary piece of hell. I'ma stand up for my brothers who can't take care of their mothers. Heard they son was selling rocks, toting pistols, shooting ops. You tried to raise him from the cell, but he too busy on the block. Can't get a visit cause they sent you across the country from your home. You love your girl, but since they shipped you, she ain't answering her phone. And to my honorable queens who can't take care of her kids, so in love with her man that she took the nigga bid. Regretting her decisions, probations, provisions. No money on the books, how she supposed to call her children? And to my twin Muhammad Ibn, the system is wicked. My brother stayed down, so I bought a bus ticket. I'm holding you down, commissary and visits.
If you ain't rap, then you honorable. Morals and principle intact, then you honorable. We hold you down cause you honorable, regardless of what they your honor do. If you ain't rap, then you honorable. Morals and principle intact, then you honorable. We hold you down cause you honorable, regardless of what they your honor do.
We done time on these streets, getting hacked up by these D's. When the judge and the DA is against you, your lawyers just trying to go fight for your life. 25 to life, hit that gavel. Them numbers right there, nigga can't handle. Fucked up in this bitch. 85%, that's federal time. We moved it in bundles, call plays in the huddles. Them rat niggas got the information. Now them pussy bitches that corroborate. I lost some good men to these streets. I swear, nigga, this shit get deep. When you land off in that bunk at night, thinking about that 25 to life. Them same niggas went against the code. Them same niggas you knew all your life. Gotta keep it, let's circle tight and watch the niggas fuck with her, right? Broke bread with them niggas, fed them niggas, but they gun with them niggas. Them same niggas you came up with, they put the feds on you, nigga.
If you ain't rap, then you honorable. Morals and principles intact, then you honorable. We hold you down cause you honorable, regardless of what they your honor do. If you ain't rap, then you honorable. Morals and principles intact, then you honorable. We hold you down cause you honorable, regardless of what they your honor do.